Hello. I suggest you crochet lace. A ribbon for decoration or for decoration. I will knit from thin cotton in 50 grams. I have 280 meters and I use a thin 0.75 millimeters for knitting. We perform the first loop. And we will tie a chain of 7 air loops. The first loop, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh air loop. Then we perform 3 capes on the hook and in the very first air loop we will tie a column with 3 capes. First, the first cape, the second cape, the third cape and 2 loops together. It turned out to be such a ring. Now we will tie this ring with columns without a cape. First, we perform an air lifting loop, then we arrange knitting so that it is convenient to tie first one half of the ringlet, then the other. On each half we will knit 10 columns without a cape. The first column without a cape, the second column without a cape, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth and 10th. In the same way, we will tie on the other side. The tail will remain inside this row. We will tie 10 columns without a cape. The first column without a cape, the second column without a cape, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth and 10th column without a cape. Now let's make a connecting column. We insert the hook into the very first column without a cape, grab the loop and stretch this loop through the main loop. Then we will tie the same ring. We collect 7 air loops. We perform 3 capes on the hook. In the very first air loop, we will tie a column with 3 capes. The first cape was tied. The second cape was tied, the third cape was tied and 2 loops together. The resulting ring will also be tied with columns without a cape. We perform an air lifting loop. On one side of the ring we will tie 10 columns without a cape. The first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth and 10th column without a cape. Then we will tie the other half of this ringlet. First, we will perform 5 columns without a cape. The first column without a cape, the second column without a cape, the third, fourth and fifth. Then we will tie 10 air loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We perform 2 capes on the hook and count the 5th loop from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We insert the hook into the 5th loop, tie a column with 2 capes. And in the same loop of the base we will tie 3 more columns with 2 capes. Here is another column with 2 capes. It turns out in this loop the second column with 2 capes, the third column with 2 capes and the fourth column with 2 capes. Then we perform 2 capes on the hook. In the next loop of the base, we will tie a column with 2 capes. Then 1 cape on the hook, and in the next loop of the base we will tie a column with 1 cape. In the next loop of the base, we will tie a column to the floor. We made a cape on the hook, pulled out the loop, and we will tie all 3 loops with 1 loop. In the next loop we will tie a column without a cape, and in the next loop of the base a connecting column. They seized the loop and pulled it through the main loop. It turned out to be half a heart. On the other hand, we will tie exactly the same half of the heart in a mirror image. We arrange knitting so that it is convenient to knit. In the first loop, in which the connecting column was tied, we do not tie anything. Then we will tie a column without a cape on top of the column without a cape. Then we tie the floor column, perform 1 cape on the hook, grab the loop and tie all 3 loops with 1 loop. Then we perform 1 cape on the hook. In the next loop we will tie a column with 1 cape. In the next loop of the base we will tie a column with 2 capes. And in the next loop of the base we will tie 4 columns with 2 capes. The first column with 2 capes, here is the second column with 2 capes, the third and fourth column with 2 capes. Then we perform 3 air loops, and in the loop in which the column was tied, we will tie 4 columns with 2 capes to the connecting column. From the wrong side, we grab the loop and pull this loop through the main loop. In the next loop of the base, we will also tie a connecting column. We introduce the hook, grab the loop from the wrong side, pull it to the front side and stretch it through the main loop. There is also a connecting column in the next loop. So, we will tie the heart with connecting columns in the middle until the working loop reaches the base of this heart. That's how a heart turns out. Now let's tie this ring further to the end. First, we will tie the connecting column. We introduce a hook into a column without a cape, which was knitted on a ring. We will tie a connecting column, and on the second half of the ring we will tie 5 columns without a cape. At the end, we will make a connecting column. Then we will tie exactly the same ring. For this ring, we dial 7 air loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we perform 3 capes on the hook. In the very first loop we will tie a column with 3 capes. And now we will tie the resulting ring. Only the heart will be tied from this side in a mirror image. First, we perform an air loop, then we knit 5 columns without a cape. The first column without a cape, the second, third, fourth and fifth. With this, we dial 10 air loops. And on the basis of this air chain, we will tie a heart. First, we perform 2 capes on the hook. From the hook we count the 5th loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We insert the hook into the 5th loop. We will tie 4 columns with 2 capes into this loop of the base. The first column, here is the second column, the third, and the fourth column with 2 capes. Then we will tie a column with 2 capes into the next loop of the base. Then a column with 1 cape, a semicolon, a column without a cape and a connecting column. Then we will tie the other half of the heart in the same way in a mirror image. We unfold the knitting so that it is convenient to knit. Above the column without a cape, we will tie a column without a cape, then we will tie a column to the floor. Then a column with 1 cape. Next is a column with 2 capes. And there remains 1 loop. We will tie 4 columns with 2 capes into it. The first column with 2 capes, in the same loop the second column with 2 capes, the third and fourth. Next, we perform 3 air loops, and in the same loop, in which 4 columns were tied, we will tie a connecting column. And then in the middle of the heart we will also tie the connecting columns. From the wrong side, we grab the loop and pull it through the main loop. We have reached the ringlet. We will also tie a connecting column into it. Now let's tie this ring. First, we will tie 5 columns without a cape, unfold the ring to the other side, and on the other side we will tie 10 columns without a cape. The first column without a cape, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth and 10th column without a cape. Then we perform a connecting column, and for the next ring we dial 7 air loops, 3 capes on the hook. In the very first loop we will tie a column with 3 capes. Then we perform an air loop, and we will tie this ring in the same way as the previous rings were knitted. Performing a heart on one of the sides. Further knitting continues in exactly the same sequence. A ring is performed, on the side of which a heart is tied. As a result, this is what lace turns out to be. This is how this lace looks on the knitting scheme. The base of it turns out to be made of rings, and a heart like this is tied on the side. I thank you for your attention. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much for the warm and pleasant words in the comments. Thank you very much for your support. Let's knit together.